Bristol. Hello. Uh, Phobia go kill. How many people phobia go kill? How many people phobia go kill? How many people phobia go kill? Phobia go kill. How many people phobia go kill? How many people phobia go kill? You, you go kill us, tire. You go kill us, tire. Oh, you go kill us, tire. How many people phobia go kill? How many people phobia go kill? Phobia go kill. Phobia go kill. Oh, phobia go kill. How many people phobia go kill? Phobia go kill. How many people phobia go kill? Kill us, tire. You go kill us, tire. Oh, you go kill us, tire. How many people phobia go kill? Oh, you go kill us, tire. Go kill us, tire. How many people phobia go kill? Phobia go kill. How many people phobia go kill? People phobia go kill. People phobia go kill. Phobia go kill. People. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Fulton Daniel, and I will be speaking here from the great state of Texas. And I know many of you have just tuned in. We all understand why we are here. You know, when the people back home are in peace, we can sleep and breathe the natural air. But we believe that our mothers and children, our parents, whoever is your significant back in Amberland, you think they are well. But over time, we have come to the conclusion that even though we are here as the brightest, as an ambassador to these great nations of us, but yet our people back home are living in fear, they are living in threat. The society are using us, and so that is why I am calling on all fellow Ambazonian that the problem is not just those who stand in the front. The problem is every one of us that we use the word English and that we were originally from the British colony and that it has become a threat to our sovereignty. And as we stay calm, because many people hasn't made that initiative to move to join the forefront. By not doing so, create an animosity because someone think he is separate, but we are all part of the system. But because we are the ambassador from the Anglophone speaking territory, from the West Cameroon speaking territory, we are their ambassador. We have been self-appointed as the ambassador from these great nations called United States. You might not be physically in the United States. You might be in other great nations. Maybe you're in Great Britain. Maybe you're in other people that practice democracy as a way of life. And that has been the standard in which the Southern Cameroon, the West Cameroon, or Federal Republic of Ambazonian has ameliorated to be able to show to the people that that's the sample of government they want to have. But we have somebody that has stand block our movement, that we can move forward with this our goal and our objectives, and that is La République. And this been orchestrated by France. France is aware that there is not a relationship that existed between the Anglophone speaking and La République. You know, when Britain in the 50s, in the 60s, whatever you can pull back, before even the Germans were defeated, Britain were preparing the Southern Cameroon and the colony territory for a sound democracy as a way of life similar to what they have in Britain. And that is the policy has been. And not only just introducing political reform, they also introduced economic reform. That is why the Southern Cameroon was viable. And those who pick up the policy of British system were able to mobilize its economic structure, infrastructure. That is why when the Southern Cameroon was prosperous, the Northern Cameroon wasn't, because they didn't understand, they were not aware of what the British policy was, the economic principle was. But the Southern Cameroons picked the policy very well and able to promote agricultural farm development. And it was become an expansion. When the British king or the British queen was sending subventions to promote the northern, none of the subventions were sent to the Southern Cameroon territory because they were economically viable. Since they were economically viable, there was no need, because they were even having surplus that could even be sent to the queen. And that is why the Southern Cameroon was respected, because of its economic structure, political structure. And following this pattern, the CDC was moving very prosperous. People in La République were migrating to come to work in CDC. And this was the sound economic policy of the Anglo-Saxon way of life, the rule of law, justice system. But La République didn't experience this because first, there was not economic investment by the French. French was busy, instead of carrying on economic development, providing infrastructural development to the French colony. They were busy murdering the people of the UPC. La République were busy murdering the people of Bamilekes. The French system were busy murdering those whom they were supposed to empower and promote economic development. Instead, they were busy murdering these individuals. And that is why they escaped and take a refuge in the Southern Cameroon territory because of its economic infrastructural development. And yet, today, we still haven't been free yet, despite the fact that there was an elected officials in the Southern Cameroon. It was a sound democracy. There was some restriction that existed. But yet, La République did not have any of those parallel of pluralistic democracy. And that has been a very difficult problems in the South, in La République. While Southern Cameroon enjoyed this pluralistic democracy, France has never been having any pure relationship with the Anglophone territory. And yet, As I'm speaking, there is a French troops that have been deposited in Douala, and some have been deposited in Simalé Airport in Yaoundé. And if you ask them what is their goal, what is their objective, is the Southern Cameroon territory a French colony? Obviously, you will agree with me that it is not. But before we proceed, I want to take a moment to thank the United States government. I want to thank the President of the United States. I want to thank the U.S. Congress. I want to thank the U.S. Secretary of State. I want to thank member of La Republique, member of President Cabinet. I want to take a moment to thank the U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. You know, many of us who have been in this beautiful country, we have studied, we understand the value of democracy. We understand the rule of law. And many of us have been in various institutions of these great nations. And we cannot sit at home and fold our arms and watch our people being slaughtered against the evil regime. And yet we are physically here in these great nations of the world. I mean, it's not something that I take it, it's something I take it personal. Because if we, as the citizens, as the daughters and sons from La Republique, from the Southern Cameroon, the former British trusted territory, the British colonial territory, and if we have had the opportunity to be in these wonderful great nations where democracy, the rule of law, is the prevailing fundamental principles, and yet we sit calmly and admire how our people being destroyed, our economic infrastructure in our Southern Cameroon are being destroyed, and yet we fold our arms because we want to fold our eyes and that we don't want to see it as something of great importance that we can collectively join together and stand as a one person from this Southern Cameroon and stand against the colonial territory. And yet we have this power, we have this influence, and yet we be naive over the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon. And this is the problem that many of us, because we want to fold our arms, we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to speak about it, we are just want to come and we're going to wait till everything is perfect and then we're going to just land there and enjoy the fruit of labor. If all of us collectively join together and stand as a one person and speak one voice without personal interest, but for the common good of both the Southern Cameroon and the fellow citizens at home, that they are going through excruciating destruction by the evil force of La Republique. La Republique has no legal binding. La Republique has no legal authority over the Southern Cameroon. Remember, when the British administrator at Enugu House of Assembly preparing the Southern Cameroon for eventual sovereignty or eventual independence, La Republique was not part of this initiative. La Republique wasn't. When the Southern Cameroon or the British administrator preparing Southern Cameroon to the United Nations delegations to witness the prosperity or the pluralistic democracy that had been prevailing in the Southern Cameroon territory, La Republique was not part of this. When France was preparing La Republique for United Nations delegation to visualize or to witness whether there is any sound change of government, Southern Cameroon was not part of that initiation. Southern Cameroon was separate, and La Republique under the communication minister making poor judgment and poor allegations that Southern Cameroon, an Anglophone speaking, belongs to La Republique. He lacked mental judgment to give clear distinction between two separate nations. The fact that both of us choose to come together does not guarantee La Republique ownership of the Southern Cameroon territory. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. It's a sovereign nation that was granted by the United Nations. It is the same body that granted La Republique. When the Southern Cameroon was granted its sovereignty, they have the choice to make their destiny. And they have the choice to decide at any moment, at any time, And that is why when the Southern Cameroon voted that they want to leave Nigeria, Nigeria has no authority to invade the Southern Cameroon because they understand that it was a sovereign nation that decided to join Nigeria. And they have the right. And that decision was respected by the Nigerian authority. And now, having been together with La Republique for the past 56 years, they have come to the conclusion that La Republique isn't part of the Southern Cameroon or what they have expected. The sons and daughters are the people that make those critical decisions. And when they have made those decisions, they have no right, La Republique have no right to invade the citizens of Southern Cameroon. When United Nations stood by, instead of recognizing that the people have the right to their sovereignty, United Nations is physically here in the United States. It's not elsewhere. United Nations is physically here in the United States. You know, the United Nations is part of the genocide that is happening in the rest of the world, because instead of promptly respond to an issue that requires an urgency, it's promptly delaying it because of their self-interest. Because you can imagine that while the Southern Cameroon are demonstrating for their sovereignty, United Nations recognize that it is their right to their self-identity. United Nations has failed in all aspects. Instead of sending La Republique to recognize that this is a sovereign nation that deserve their sovereignty, and if they choose, that's what they choose, and they have the legal right because they are a sovereign nation. When a child is born, the child never born twice. Maybe yours had one time born twice. When a mother goes to deliver a child after 9 months of pregnancy, the child will never be delivered a second time again. So when United Nations granted the Southern Cameroon, it means Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. They might decide to live with somebody, likewise they might choose not to live with somebody. If Southern Cameroon choose to leave La Republique, it's their will to do so because it is within their power of jurisdiction to have their decisions not to live with La Republique. And seeing an mental dysfunction communication minister failed in all aspects to recognize that the people of the Southern Cameroon have the legal right to whatever choice they choose to their destiny. It is quite imperative that when you find people making wrong judgment, United Nations Secretary General travel. You see, there is a dysfunction between the United Nations current system and those of the previous United Nations. You know, when there is a decisions, they take a rapid judgment because they were concerned of a massive exodus of civilians. That is why when the British administrator at the time, the British administrator had a larger populations, including Southern Cameroon and Nigeria. There was no massive exodus of killing that was going on because there was economic principles, there were political principles. Every aspect was in order, and that is why the people were more unified. But the French structural system believed in military system of government, that anyone can be forced and willed. Either if you don't abide by the regulations, you must be shot dead. And because of this French policy, that is why there is animosity, disunity, dysfunctional system within the French African system. And when you stand here and look at me about the situation that is going on, it's very deplorable that you can have 40,000 citizens of the Southern Cameroon, children and daughters that were born in this territory, and now become slaves and become refugees in Nigeria. The leaders of the interim government that have been sandwiched between La Republique and Nigeria. There's no way to find them. And I am personally asking United States government, because we are presenting this case to the United government, 9 cabinet members or 12 cabinet members, including the interim president, cannot disappear and sandwich between 2 nations, and no one can be able to aware of where they are. I am presenting this case this Saturday, here in the great state of Texas, to the United States government, that 12 people in a cabinet meeting cannot disappear and no one knows where they are. I am asking this to the United States government to make personal investigations and find out exactly where these cabinet members that were adopted or sandwiched between La Republique and Nigeria to clearly identify, because it's almost a month now, the wife, the children, family are not aware of where they are. And even include one of them is a U.S. citizen with a U.S. passport. I cannot imagine that a U.S. citizen is in Nigeria and Nigeria will allow La Republique in their territory and adopt these citizens, and even though they have a refugee status in Nigerian government, it is Nigeria is bound by this regulation of the United Nations Charter of Human Respect of Refugee, wherever they are. Nigeria is a signatory to these general regulations, and Nigeria practice democracy. And if Nigeria is respect this rule of law, then they should be able to stand up and say, no, we are standing for the common law system, because that is what we're going to embrace. That is what we are advocating. That's the power of the common law system. It is the best system in the rest of the world combined. I can't imagine Nigeria can't even give exactly accurate report of exactly where these 12 members of the cabinet of the Southern Cameroon are. Nigeria has a more better relationship with Nigeria, because previously they had a sound relationship because the British administrator were being administered in Nigeria. And when Southern Cameroon chose to leave Nigeria, it was a very good sound relationship. La Republique is just an adopted child that we embrace to choose to leave, and we have, instead of the adopted child choose us to become a slave. And that is why I am asking United States government, I'm asking U.S. Congress, I am asking State Department, I'm asking Department of Defense to investigate and release what is actually happening to this cabinet member of the Anglophone South Zone. Anglophone economic stability during the British administration, the Anglophone was a viable economic system. Their economic potential was appreciated by the British Queen. They realized that instead of the Queen sending financial assistance to the English speaking, but instead the English speaking were able to provide account of profit made in their business, in their trade. In absolutely, there has a trade surplus. So Anglophone is a sovereign nation that practice economic viability. And imagine that the cabinet member being sandwiched between La Republique and Nigeria, and yet no one is able to account of exactly where they are. So we are asking State Department, we are asking U.S. Department of Defense, we are asking the White House, we are asking U.S. Congress, that is La Republique murdering 9 cabinet members, including a U.S. citizen. Then La Republique, it is not something that I'm bringing it up. It's something that actually happened. A U.S. citizen, a lecturer here, a senior lecturer here in the university, here in the United States, traveled to see his family. He was adopted and arrested and placed in jail simply because he made a statement. It is his right within his jurisdiction to write. That's what he does. That's why he's an intellectual. He's intellectual to write about any system that is not functional to viability of the rest of the world. And you can imagine that this member of the cabinet of the Southern Cameroon territory presiding over in Nigeria were being adopted and sandwiched and murdered. And the family, the wife, the children, they are not aware exactly where they are. And the major media don't even talk about it. You have the major media here around the world. No one is actually talking about how this happened. No one is making any investigation. But I want to thank the opportunity that we are able to bring this to the rest of the world. Because you can imagine that within 1 month, entire cabinet of a government, of an interim government, are being adopted and sandwiched and being even the wife, the children, even close neighbors, no one is aware where this government are. So I'm bringing this to the world. I'm bringing this to the rest of the United Nations. I'm bringing this to, because no one is scared. There's no investigation going on whether what happened to these cabinet members. Yet everyone stays silent. In the meantime, there are at least 40,000 citizens of the Federal Republic of Ambazonian, the former British trusted territory, that are currently languishing in Nigeria. And yet, the United Nations doesn't see that as a matter of urgency, that they need to call for an emergency summit meeting to discuss this exodus of humanitarian crisis in the West African region of the former British trusted territory. It is very, very unfortunate that one can imagine that when you have 40,000 civilians being pushed out of their normal activities, when children and mothers are being murdered, when a mother who is pregnant with twins is being forced out of his comfort zone, and she delivered these twins in the middle of the forest and bleed to death, and one can very feel frustrated to see how citizens and in their own normal territory are being bleed to death because they invited an august guest to their home, which is La République. La République absolutely doesn't have any concrete relationship that existed between the two nations. La République has no legal document. La République simply is a friendship request, just like in a popularly here in the United States called account will stay. Account will stay doesn't guarantee you to be the ownership or the occupier of that home. You simply ask to come and stay with us, maybe like a companionship. La République has no legal binding. When communication minister in La République state that the sovereignty of the South Cameroon, a nation on its own, is part of La République, then I'm kind of wondering his mental stability. I'm kind of wondering what he stood for. Because it is absolutely chaotic when a person with mental stability can justify between a sovereign nation living within another nation and a nation that is not part of it. So the Anglo-Saxon territory is never part of La République. It's a sovereign nation. Why should mother deliver his child in the middle of the forest, escaping from brutality of the evil force of La République? One will wondering why should she be able to leave his own territorial integrity and move to the forest where she has to bleed to death because she gave a forceful pregnancy, and yet the world stands adamantly rather than focus on the issues. And imagine, it's really pathetic when Iran carried on a demonstration. I mean, the whole issues was all over the media. No one talked about. Every media was talking about Iranian issues. But this is Southern Cameroon. Is it because of their identity? What else can I talk about it? How should the people present their case? And that is why it's very sympathetic that even African continent, that they understood the value that the Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. The whole AU should have stood up and denounced it and said, no, we must respect individual nations. The fact that they are living together with La République doesn't guarantee La République as the occupier. It is very, very unfortunate when people take advantages and show these images of people killing. It's because the international body, which is physically here in the United States, in New York, called the United Nations, it's our taxpayers' money that are being used to fund these United Nations. But when we work here and we generate revenue, and they use to fund United Nations, but the United Nations is not capable of providing the sound duty that it was supposed to be doing. Because if the United Nations respond accurately, promptly, then 40,000 people would not have migrated to Nigeria, where a woman will bleed to death in his pregnancy. I mean, imagine when La République is murdering children, when La République takes children and place them in front of their mothers and shot them dead. That is the disgusting thing that one would imagine that I would be proud to be with La République as a sovereign nation. I mean, it's very, very pathetic that when the rest of the world doesn't look at the reality and focus on the reality and present this case so that we can preserve human dignity. I mean, it's very, very unfortunate. While we're speaking, there is an ongoing genocide, murdering of people in the Southern Cameroon territory by the colonial, by La Republique, who claim to be the ownership of the Southern Cameroon speaking English territory. And yet, we have embassies. Yet, we have embassy. We have U.S. embassy in Cameroon. We have French embassy. Oh no, you can't expect to get any good accountability from the French embassy because it's an embassy that is distorting the African dignity. But we have nations, we have U.S. embassy that must give the accountability of exactly what kind of genocide is happening in the Southern Cameroon territory. We have the British embassy. That is the colonial territory that Southern Cameroon derived its name because the policy and the economic principles of the Southern Cameroon derive from the British system. And yet we have this embassy that are physically there and they are not reporting. Either they are reporting to the government and the government are not taking action. And that is why I am bringing these matters to our fellow American citizens because it has become a disgusting system. It is very, very unfortunate. It is very, very unfortunate when children and mothers are being murdered. There is no accountability. La Republique has no legal or binding. La Republique has no legal authority over the Southern Cameroon. It's simply account will stay. By account will stay does not guarantee La Republique ownership of the territory. Every member of the government have been French appointed officials. They have been assimilated. Their cultural identity has been wiped out, and yet Southern Cameroon is a nation. It's a sovereign nation on its own. You know, they are asking the youth to come and celebrate. What should the youth celebrate? So anyone in the Southern Cameroon territory that attempt to step out tomorrow as an attempt to go out and demonstrate, then you might be looking at your own unfriendly manifestation because absolutely Southern Cameroon is not a colonial territory of La Republique. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation. Southern Cameroon has a government of its own. And no matter where the government residing, the government can be anywhere. During the South Korea, North Korea, when they were under the Japanese Empire, during those empires, when South Korea emancipated, they had their interim government. The interim government was in Shanghai, China. And yet they function very well because they have emancipated. They choose not to be part of Japan. And that is history that manifests. So interim government doesn't happen to be in the physical territory. It can be anywhere it is. And therefore the people has to abide by the rules and regulations governed by the interim government. So I'm here present this case for this evening that if you're Southern Cameroon citizens and you step on the road tomorrow as in Southern Cameroon because of La Republique, then you might be meeting at the wrong side of your own caliber because we are serious about this case. Southern Cameroon is no longer part of La Republique and we will persuade all this till we reach where we are. As I'm speaking, the president of La Republique may be dead or he may not still be alive, and yet they are busy manipulating the constitution to implant someone is unknown. He might be still alive, but yet why should they keep secret? He's the president of the whole nation. If he is dead, tell the people he's dead. Let the process follow the normal pattern of laws and regulations. If there is any laws and regulations that bind La Republique. If the president is dead, tell the people. Don't record information and denounce it in the public that the president is still alive. No one is a child that is dumb to understand what is happening. If he's dead, tell the people he's dead. If Popia is dead, yeah, it's okay. Everyone is sitting in that pathway. Everybody has to die at one time in their life. But by not showing, tell the people that this is what is going on and respect the laws that govern. Because you don't respect the law that governs, that's why you hide him, whether he's alive or he's dead. Yes, whatever has happened to him, doesn't matter. But yet, Southern Cameroon is moving forward, is moving, and no one shall be able to be deterrent us. No one shall be able to be the detriment to the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon territory. Because as we move forward, Southern Cameroon shall be a sovereign nation, and no one shall be able to stop that. I mean, the economic infrastructural development has all been ruled out and taken to France. The finance part of it is all controlled in France. Every political aspect is controlled in France. When shall the African become a freedom nation when nothing shall not be decided by French government? The people are educated. The people know what is rule of law. If La Republic doesn't, then the Southern Cameroon does. And so therefore, that is why they are standing forward that their sovereignty must be preserved and that no one in any capacity shall stop them from moving forward. That is why I am presenting this case to the fellow American citizens here in the United States, because that's the country that I value. That's the country I respect. That's the country I stand for freedom. Freedom, it must be preserved. Freedom must ring. Freedom is a universal gift of humanity. And French government is preserving freedom in France, but preserve this destruction in Africa continent. And yet, he is a permanent member of the United Nations to continue to disrupt peace and stability in the sub-Saharan region of Africa. Arise, Africa. Arise. Arise and stand firm for your freedom, because no one shall bring you freedom except you and I will stand together and stand firmly and tell France that enough is enough. The people of decent society in Africa deserve their equal right and freedom, and not to be decided by France. What in the world should French military doing in La Republique? What in the world is La Republique military doing in the south, in La Littoral and Simalaï airport? Why? Huh? Why? Why? Why is the French military doing in Simalaï airport and the port of Douala? The Southern Cameroon territory, it has a natural seaport in Victoria. It has a natural seaport in Victoria. It has a seaport in Tico. I mean, it is very unfortunate because you and I cannot be able to see what it is. It is very disgruntled that La Republique, all the revenue, all the surpluses in the Anglophone territory, former West Cameroon, Southern Cameroon, has all been drained to La Republique and developed La Republique, while the people of the Southern Cameroon become the sufferer. And yet, we doesn't want to talk about it. And in a local meeting, you don't want to talk about it. In a local Njangi house, you don't want to talk about it. In any place, you don't want to stay silent. You want to be neutral because you want to show how patriotism you are to La Republique. And yet, it is your brothers and sisters that are going through hell of La Republique, because you don't want to talk about it. You want to stay silent. You want to show how patriotism you are to La Republique. And yet I am bringing this to you, that as you continue to block the way in a little Njangi to express this, because you think they want to show that you are more respectful. I am telling you, the people of Southern Cameroon, you must arise. You must rise and stand for freedom. This nation that we all gather to appreciate the beauty of this nation is because someone somehow sacrificed their life to make this country become a nation that we are appreciated. It's because somebody somehow in one way or the other sacrificed their life, because you don't want to talk about it, because you think you are so superior. I am here to let you know that The people of Southern Cameroon are all suffering the consequences. No one is exception and no one is left out. We all must come together and stand, because if all of us stand in one voice, we will defend the enemy and build a sovereign nation that we will all stand and proud of, and call the Southern Cameroon a decent place to live. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. It is it is absolutely pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. You are born in a territory. You become a slave in the territory because someone somehow enslaved you. And you just take it is normal for to become a slave by La Republique. I have a good news for you, that we are the conqueror and we shall overcome our enemy, and we will stand firm and we rise together and we will land on the bottom of our enemies, and they shall speed like the worm and break into particles as we stand firm and defend the sovereignty of the people of the Southern Cameroon, and our enemy shall be the dead horse as we move forward as a unified entity. I want to take a moment to thank you. If you're watching, wherever you're watching, just send me a note, indicate where you are, because I usually take time to look at where you are, where my audience are, and who I was speaking with. As you put a note, if you are in United States, indicate that you are here in the United States. If you're in ground zero, indicate that you're in ground zero. We understand that we are fighting this cause together. If you're in La Republique, just indicate that you are in La Republique, because we are all fighting this cause together. If you are in South Africa, indicate that you are in South Africa. If you are in Nigeria, you're in Nigeria. If you are in Europe, just indicate that you're in Europe. I want you to know where you are and where you are watching. And this is very important to me to understand that I have a people that I'm sending a message, and I have a people that is receiving the message, and that we can work together as a sovereign people, and we shall come together and be the conqueror, because we must defeat our enemy for the interest of the people of the Southern Cameroon. La Republique has its territory. La Republique simply vacate and move to its territory. Our people, our interim leaders, our interim government, La Republique cannot in any aspect and adopt a sovereign members of our cabinet. And today is almost a month and no one is aware of. If a single individual was adopted in Europe, the world would have, they would have raised hell. If a single individual was adopted in Europe, they would have raised hell. But because it's African descent and it's a property of France, no one want to talk about it. No one want to measure in their major media. A cabinet of 12 individuals, whatever the number is, have been adopted by La Republique and Nigeria and sandwiched them. No one knows where their lives are. And yet, it is okay because it is a black race. I am here to bring this to the United States because I respect the United States government. It is a government that stands for freedom. It is a government that stands for unity. It is a government that stands for equality. And the United States government cannot stay silent when people have been adopted and sandwiched within Nigeria and La Republique, and yet we don't know whether they are still breathing their natural life. And yet, no one cares to talk about it. Southern Cameroon is a nation. It has the right to choose its destiny. When the British Queen or the British people choose to decide to leave the European Union, it It was okay, and they regard this as peaceful separation. The entire European Union did not invade France. They did not send the troops to invade France, Britain, that they're supposed to remain in the Union. If that is fair enough as a scenario, why should the people of Southern Cameroon cannot choose to remain their own sovereignty? Why should they become a place of genocide? If Littoral choose to break off La Republic has the legal right to send its military because it's part of its territorial integrity. If people of Grand Nord choose to leave La Republic has the right to send its military to invade that area because it's part of its territorial integrity. But when the people of a sovereign nation choose to leave La Republic has no legal right to invade them because this is within the power of their jurisdiction. And yet, France ignores it. France doesn't want to talk about it. France doesn't want to just stay and come because it is the property that feeded the people of France. And yet the people that they belong to that particular territory, they basically have no food on the table when children are laying and having stomach that is swollen because there is no food they can eat. And yet the investment that comes out of the territory are feeding the people in France, and yet the Southern Cameroon become in agony, living in agony. If Britain can choose to leave European Union, why can't the people of Southern Cameroon choose to leave La Republic? Britain is a sovereign nation. The initial encounter that by joining the European Union, it will provide profitability, easy access to the larger market. That was the philosophy they had. But unfortunately, they found that it wasn't as what they thought. They choose to vote and to kick out of the European Union. It is within their power as a sovereign nation to remove them, to depart from the European Union and become a sovereign nation, because the relationship that initially brought them is no longer exists. So the people of Southern Cameroon is a sovereign nation, equally like British. They have the right to say no. The relationship that exists between us and La Republic no longer effective. So we have the choice to say no. We want to move, and La Republic has no legal authority to invade the people of the Southern Cameroon. It is very, very unfortunate. It is very, very unfortunate. I am speaking to the United States government because it is a government that I participate. I participate in an election process here in the United States, and I value the rule of election process. I value this beauty of these nations, and that I'm proud of these nations. And that is why I am present this case to the fellow American people, because I respect them and I believe that they will support me and will liberate my people that are suffering back home in African continent. It is very embarrassing. It is very embarrassing. It is very pathetic. It is very pathetic. I mean, before I proceed, I always read this. I always read this. Where is it? Because many people don't want to take the truth. They think they can manipulate. They can manipulate everyone, but you will not manipulate the people of the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon, because the people has risen. As they have risen, they must stand on their feet. This is the United Nations resolutions. It was the United Nations resolution 1608 SV 21st of April 1961. This resolution wasn't held in China. It wasn't held in Shanghai. It wasn't held in Japan. It wasn't held in Europe. It was held in the land where democracy prevails, the land of the free, the land where we can stand and have our value, our voice heard. Here in New York, the land where justice prevails. This was a General Assembly that was held here in the United States. In a 94 plenary meeting, Friday 21st April 1961 at 3 p.m. in New York. In New York, the UN 15th Session General Assembly President was Frederick. The General Assembly Vice President, Mr. Xiang from China. Reporter during the committee was Boy from Denmark. Those were the leaders at the time of the plenary session when the Southern Cameroon independence was recognized. Those nations that voted in support of the Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation. 64 voted in favor of the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. 23 voted against the Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation. But majority voted in favor of the Southern Cameroon, 64 to 23. 10 vote in abstention. So if you add those who vote in abstention to the number who vote against, Southern Cameroon still prevailed. Nations that vote for the Southern Cameroon sovereignty, I'm just going to read them in number. Honduras, Hungary, Iceland, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Japan, Jordan, Laos, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Mali, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nigeria, Norway, Pakistan, Philippines, Poland, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Sweden, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, Soviet Social Republic, Union of South Africa, Union of Soviet Social Republic, United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, United States of America, Venezuela, Yemen, Yugoslavia, Canada, Ceylon, Chile, Costa Rica, Cuba, Cyprus, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Federation of Malaya, Finland, Ghana, and Guinea. Those were the nations that voted for the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon here in the United States, here in New York. And if Southern Cameroon, 40,000 people are refugees in Nigeria, I mean, it's very pathetic that you have 40,000 in Nigeria, despite the fact that United Nations voted, recognized them as a sovereign entity. Those that voted against the Southern Cameroon, the number includes 23 of them, and I shall read them here. Israel, Ivory Coast, Luxembourg, Madagascar, Niger, Paraguay, Senegal, Upper Volta, Uruguay, Argentina, Belgium, Brazil, Cambodia, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, China, Congo, Congo Libreville, Dahomey, France, Gabon, Greece. One thing, pardon, that you understood here, if you are following along with me, that all the French colony are being persuaded by France to vote against the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon in the United Nations. And that is why, even now that the Southern Cameroon has rise, they are still thinking that they still control the hegemony of the Southern Cameroon territory. I mean, you can see from yourself that a majority of those nations, the French colony, voted against the sovereignty because France persuaded them not to vote against the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon, and yet the Southern Cameroon gained their independence. 10 nations that abstained against the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon, what are 10 of them in number? You have Italy, Panama, Peru, Portugal, Spain, Togo, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Haiti. If the great nations of the United States stood for the Southern Cameroon as a sovereign nation, who else shall stood against the people of Southern Cameroon? Why should they even be the point of murdering people in the Southern Cameroon? When a stupid communication minister that lacked mental stability, lacked understanding, lacked history of what is Southern Cameroon, will claim that the Southern Cameroon was part of La Republique, I am sorry to let you know that we are coming after you, and that we will tell you that Southern Cameroon is not and will not be part of La Republique. Watch me, and thank you. Have a good night, and it was nice talking to you. God bless. Have a good weekend. It was Funton Daniel speaking from the great state of Texas.